WESB.
The thoughts and opinions expressed on this program aren't necessarily those of WESB or its sponsors.
Here's Ann Holliday.
Thanks for tuning into the show today, and my guest is somebody who has not been here in forever. Josh Hatcher, welcome back.
Ann, how's it going?
It's not too bad. And Josh, last week you sent us a press release that I thought was just fascinating, and it's about an event that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we've got an event coming up. First of all, I run a website called manlyhood.com, which we can talk a little bit about the story of how that whole crazy thing came together. But we're doing a men's weekend that's coming up August 18th through 20th. We're going to start in the evening, so when you get off work on Friday, you can come check it out. And we're going to do some shooting, some hiking, I'm kind of thinking maybe some Highland Games type stuff, hatchet throwing, fun stuff that guys like to do. But the whole purpose of it is to allow men to kind of build a band of brothers that can help them on their journey as they kind of grow as men. And you can be an uber manly man, you can be a less than uber manly man, and still appreciate and enjoy this kind of camaraderie. And that's kind of the whole point of the whole event. So
if guys want to register for this, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, hop on the website, manlyhood.com/forge. And that's manlyhood.com/forge. And they can fill out the information, and then I'll contact them with info for payment. And payment is, I'm not making any profit. It's just to cover the costs of the lodging and the food. So.
Okay. And we'll mention that again before the end of the show. And also you can find that information at the community calendar page at WESB.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
And so where did this whole idea come from, Josh?
Well, I've got a really kind of crazy background, and I meet a lot of people, and I like to be connected to people, and that's just something that's kind of who I am. And working in ministry, working in radio, working in all these different places, I've met a lot of people who, for some reason, look to me for advice. Like my Facebook goes off all the time with people saying, my wife's about to leave me, what do I do? Or, hey, can you pray for my grandma's ingrown toenail? Just all the kind of stuff but I get a lot of that. And I want to be there for people. And I know that because I'm there for people, people are there for me too. I want to make that clear. It's just relationships. But through all that, I started realizing, like, people are saying, hey, the advice you gave me was really good. And it really helped me. And so that kind of is part of it. So in the back of my mind for a long time, I've been wanting to be able to help people. That's just, I know that giving people advice, helping people talk through and work through their problems, a lot of times I don't tell them what to do because I don't really know. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, exactly.
But
yeah.
I think people sometimes just need somebody to talk to and work out their issues and to think about things from an outsider's perspective a little bit. And so that started this journey for me. And I didn't know exactly who I wanted to help or how. And I started seeing some really crazy and scary statistics about male suicide rates, for example. Out of 11 people that I wish I could remember the numbers. I'm sorry. I think I have them in my press release actually, but
you do. It's 93 out of 121 people.
Yeah, every day. 121 people kill themselves every day. 93 of them are men. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Mental illness is probably the largest reason. And I think, honestly, a lot of people have mental illness. And I'm not a mental health professional, and I want to make that clear. I think everybody has a degree of mental illness because we all have a mind, and eventually it gets ill. So I want to make that clear. But I think that seeing that's not acceptable. We shouldn't be okay with that. We shouldn't be okay with that many men dying and taking their lives because they feel desperate. If you look at Henry David Thoreau once described men as living lives of quiet desperation because we don't have anybody we can talk to because that's not manly.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't have friends, and we can't say, my wife is driving me crazy and I don't know what to do about it. We don't have that. We don't have friends to say, I am really struggling with this alcohol stuff and I don't know who to talk to, and we can't do that. It's vulnerable and it shows a side of us. But when you look at if you ever talk to vets, especially ones who've served closely, now a lot of them when they get home, they don't have it, but they talk about, and they always reminisce and think about when they're on the battlefield, they're not fighting for their country. They're not fighting for their family. They're fighting for their brother that's next to them because the military has done a great job at creating a culture that honors brotherhood and camaraderie. And so in that culture, they have each other's back and they talk to each other and they look out for each other. Then unfortunately they get home and they get separated from that. And then that's why we have again, high rates of suicide amongst veterans because
And they think they're supposed to be strong and not talk to anybody.
right. But they did talk to their friends when they're on the battlefield.
Yeah.
But when they get home, they don't. And the other thing that I encountered is I started seeing, like I was listening to your newscast coming in, and I'm hearing violent crime. I don't hear a lot of women's names being read on the radio during that violent crime. It's men. And now women do occasionally do that, and I know that there's a lot of other issues and a lot of other things, but what if I can talk to these guys and encourage them when they're 18, 19, 20, and maybe help point them on the right path just by being a guy that says, hey, you don't have to live like that. You don't have to do that. And so that's honestly, I think, part of what really propelled and birthed this whole thing is I just want to help create a source for guys to connect with each other, to think about personal development, to think about their own life and how they can live their life to be a better man. And I think that's going to curb. I'm not saying I'm going to curb. I'm kind of like the guy throwing the starfish on the beach, But if I can at least start the conversation, at least the guys around me and the guys that I can come into contact with will be thinking about how can I be a better man and what does that mean? Because I'll be honest. I mean, if you just walk in Tops or walk in Walmart or the grocery stretcher and you look at the men that walk in and out, every one of them is different. Mm-hmm. They're not all bearded and hairy and big and strong. They're all different. And that's something that we really have to understand and frame in this whole concept is that we're all going to look different. And what manhood looks like for us is going to look different for each of us. But I think that there are some universal qualities, and those qualities also apply to a lot of women too, right?
Right.
When we look, I'm not going to, that's not my place to tell women how to behave. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to mansplain everything.
Right.
That doesn't go over well.
And while we're talking about that
Sure.
too, we don't want people to think that, believe me, I would not have Josh here if this was a let's have men take charge of the world thing.
Right.
This is to make men be better men, but it's not to downgrade or demean women.
No.
Or take their part in society away or anything like that.
I think that historically, the problems that we've had because men have done a poor job being men. Okay? If you look back to the 50s, I heard a story the other day about, this guy who had 3 or 4 mistresses, but he always came home and loved his wife and took care of his kids. He had 3 or 4 mistresses. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable.
Right.
It's not. When you make a commitment to have a wife, you're committing to be the only one for her, and she's the only one for you. But that's a common thing. Like everybody says, oh, that always happened back then. That happened all the time back then. It shouldn't. And I don't want to think that I'm hearkening back to some golden era when men always had it right, because we haven't had it right. And there are historical concepts, like domestic violence that have in the past been considered acceptable. They're not acceptable. I don't like to think of, when I say that a man should lead his home, I'm not saying he should be the lord over his wife and be the boss. I'm not saying that. I'm telling you what, if you look at my house, my wife has a lot more to say about what happens in our house than I do. That doesn't mean that, but we lead together. And, I have a friend who, he's a man actually, but I'm going to call him a feminist because that's his perspective on things. And he gets very upset. He always says, smash the patriarchy and things like that. And I'm like, look, let's have patriarchy and matriarchy. Let's do this together. Men should lead. Women should lead. I'll let women talk about women leading, and I'll talk to men about men leading and what that means. And so that's kind of, I think, where I'm coming from is that I think we can work together on this. And to be a leader is not a matter of privilege. That's a matter of responsibility. We're not talking about King George coming in. He gets to eat all the extra chicken because he's the king. We're talking about, if you're a leader, that means that you have responsibility. So as a leader of my home, if my kids do something wrong and they break a window playing baseball, I'm the one that pays for the window, right?
Right.
I'm the one that makes that right because it's my responsibility. That's what leadership means. It doesn't mean dominance. It doesn't mean superiority. It means leadership. And a lot of times leadership is the guy who walks behind the horse and scoops up after him. And so I think that, when I first started this, I was getting a lot of feedback from some feminists who, and I do think, I'll be honest, I think that in general, the feminist movement has a lot of unfair politicization happening. And I think it's become further from what it was meant to be. I think it was meant to be about equality. And I think what we have now is a little bit of, we've allowed our culture now to reflect what the weakest parts of what manhood are. So like, and this has been happening for a while. You know, if you were to look at TV dads in the 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think of Leave It to Beaver's dad. Mm-hmm. You think of, you know, all the way up to the Brady Bunch. And even though maybe off the scene things weren't as nice as on screen, but like the cultural image of a father was a good thing.
Right.
Fast forward to the 90s and on through, and you've got, you know, Al Bundy, Homer Simpson. And I'm not saying that from a persecution, oh, look how bad. That's reflecting what they're seeing. You know, that's a reflection. But I think that what's happened is then, you know, culture imitates life, and then life imitates culture. And so now here we are, generations after that, and nobody has any idea what it means to be a dad. Nobody has any idea what it means to be a father, and a lot of people have no idea what it means to be a man. And I want to see that get better.
So the people, have you had one of these retreats before?
No, this is actually our first retreat. Okay. And a lot of that was birthed out of, I've done men's groups through church at Open Arms, and a lot of times in the summer one year we did a grilling with grills, and we read a Bear Grylls book that was like a motivational book, and we would get together at Callahan Park and grill hot dogs and talk about the book and talk about life. And so I'm going to say we've done this kind of thing on a very smaller scale, an hour a week, you know, but not a whole weekend altogether. And so, you know, we played a lot of Frisbee and, you know, did dumb stuff like try to climb a tree with a improvised harness. And, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, we goof off and you have fun. And I think that part of that is because one of the things that I think is inherently manly and should be inherently manly, and I think we've lost it a little bit, is adventure. I think that, you know, and like I said, I'm not saying women don't like adventure. And if you're getting offended by it, take a chill pill. Just relax. It's okay. Not you, but, you know.
Oh, everybody who gets offended by everything needs to
just relax a little bit. Relax. But, I can't speak about women. I'm not a woman, and I don't understand. And any guy who ever says he does understand women is lying to you. So, but from that perspective of, you know, men want adventure, and we crave that. That's something that's in us. And we spend a lot of time watching adventures or making adventures on video games and watching fake people pretend to have adventures on television. And what are we actually doing that has us risk a little bit, has us, you know, struggle a little bit to try to win something? And I think we need more of that. I think our lives need more of that.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Instead of staying home and watching The Amazing Race, go out and do something.
Go out and do The Amazing Race, you know, and go travel or go climb a mountain, you know.
I think this is just a fantastic idea. And like I said, one of the reasons I wanted to bring Josh on the show is because of the stuff you just talked about feminism and everybody being equal and
a good, you know, another thing that I'm going to say that I think that matters to men is the word honor. And when you look at what the actual word means and where it comes from, it means to value things rightly. So I should honor women and I should value them rightly. And when we don't, that's where the problem is. When I don't value a woman for who she is and how she is, then I have not succeeded. I have done something very unmanly. And, you know, and that, you know, when I think of my wife, if I were to think of my wife as just a housekeeper, that's not manly. She's more than that. She does help keep the house because that's our relationship and that's what our family does. But she has a lot more to add than just that. And it's also my responsibility to keep up with the house so that it's not all on her. And it's my responsibility to teach my kids to do that, you know? And I think that's where I think what we've done is we have abandoned the concept of responsibility and saying, this is up to me. I have to be the one to do the right thing here. And so when it comes to our relationships with women and how men treat women, that needs to be done right. And I'm sorry, you know, I hear a lot about the word, I'm sure you've heard the phrase toxic masculinity, where we tell men things like man up. Listen, there's nothing wrong with telling a man to man up. You need to man up. You need to say, look, I'm going to do what's right no matter what it costs. I'm not going to sit here and whine about it. You know, don't worry about what you feel. Take your feelings, process them properly, and put them aside. You know, and then deal with a situation. Man up and do that. And that's not toxic. Toxic masculinity, when they talk about, you know, men who bully women or abuse women or rape culture and all that kind of stuff, that's not masculine at all. That's not manly. And anybody who does that isn't a man. They're a boy who has no sense of self-control, who needs some sense knocked into him so that he can know and do the right thing instead of the wrong thing.
Yeah, you're not a man, you're a criminal. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you know, I do know men that have done wrong things and have turned themselves around.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you know, I don't want to see, you know, people get this, you know, that's not masculinity. That's
Right.
not what it means to be a man. And I think that we almost have a fear of men when we should just embrace the fact this is something that's really, really, again, lacking. We can't accept and understand diversity.
Right.
Real true diversity. Real true diversity allows men to be men. But what we have is, oh, you're a man, you're not a woman, or you're not gay, or you're not, and I'm not saying that's another topic, but you're not one of our things that we really like to focus on here right now in our culture of diversity. So we're pushing you out because you've already had your chance in the last, you know, 15 millennia that we've existed or whatever. You know, let's be diverse, and let's say, if you're a man, let him be a man. That's okay. That's not a bad thing.
This has been really interesting, Josh.
I hope so.
So you also have a book that talks about this, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, that's kind of started out of the blog. I took a lot of the content that I had created for my blog, and I said, let's expand on this. And so it's called Manlyhood, the 12 Pillars of Masculinity. And I talk about things like honor and integrity and self-discipline and all of those things. And I put them into a nice book, and it's up on Amazon. So
Okay.
I've sold a few copies. Not a lot, but it's a few. It's kind of fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think maybe after this, people will it'll start taking off,
maybe
and
people
will
can- yeah.
get it.
Yeah, think about it and what it means for you, you know?
Because I think, especially with the masculinity and femininity and equal rights, I think, like you said, it's gotten way out of hand, and equal is what we're talking about, not
Right.
one being above
Right.
the other.
Right.
It's equal.
It's equal. And it's okay to be who you are. And listen, right now we have some identity politics happening. And again, I think they're siding on that whole diversity trend where it's like, it's almost a bad thing to be a straight white male. And that's not my place to say. I don't understand it. I can't comprehend it. I just know that I'm going to treat people nicely. I'm going to treat them kindly, and I want them to have a good life. If they disagree with me on what it means to express things, that's fine. Just don't try to stop me from expressing who I am, you know? And I think that our identity has to be rooted in something deeper than our gender or our gender preference or our sexual orientation. Our identity has to be rooted in who we are and what we do. And I think that we're starting to hang things on the wrong hooks, you know? At least that's what I think's going on.
Well, and one of the things that I've noticed is going on that I'm hoping that you have some men there and you can discuss this part, is they kind of feel like they need to get even with women now. That women have been able to do this and men haven't, and let's let the men be able to do this now because women can do it.
There's a whole movement called the Meninist movement.
Yes.
And it's the equivalent of the alt-right, and it's probably the same neck-bearded guys sitting at home in their basement, in their mother's basement, who's paying their bills, just griping on the internet and not actually doing anything. And listen, you know, we can do this. It's about personal responsibility. Nobody's holding you back from anything, ever. I don't care who you are or what you're facing. Racism, racist people aren't holding you back. Now, maybe in the 60s and they were, hanging people, lynching people, okay, yeah. But you know what? Regardless of all of that, in 2017, where we're at today, nobody is holding you back from being who you're supposed to be. And even if there is a situation that is unfair or unright or unjust, because there are, it's still up to you to step up and do the right thing. If you were born in a life that didn't have as much privilege as somebody else, guess what? It's up to you to change that. It's up to you to conquer that. It's up to you to live a life that rises above your situation and your circumstance. And it's hard for people to understand it and grasp that.
Hey, if you think Oprah Winfrey was born a billionaire, go read her entire story.
Yeah.
You would be shocked if you didn't know
Oprah's
that.
a manly man, I'll tell you that. Just kidding, Oprah. Just kidding. Like I said, these principles are universal, and they don't just apply to men. And so I actually get a lot of messages from women who read my blog, and they're like, why are you only writing this for men? I'm like, because that's who I'm supposed to reach. If you can apply this to your life, feel free. That's great.
Well, I was thinking, how manly does Stedman have to be with Oprah?
Oh, you know what? No, but honestly, like a strong woman is a good thing, and to be able to stand alongside her and let her be in that position takes a lot of leadership. And I'm not saying he's her leader. I'm just saying he's leading himself. He's leading, these are principles that whether you're the boss or the bottom guy on the totem pole, you've got to be able to step aside and do the right thing. And that's honestly what I think is at the core of leadership. Is I think it has more to do with leading yourself and less to do with leading other people most of the time. I think that when you lead yourself well, people will follow.
Well, that's the whole thing for probably our whole lives. We've heard lead by example, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so, Josh, can you give us the information one more time about?
Sure. Yeah. If you go to manlyhood.com/forge, and if you forget it, just go to manlyhood.com and you'll see a little picture of a fire on there that says, check it out. And we've got people registered from Ohio and possibly Philadelphia. There's people from a good distance away coming to this if everything goes according to plan. And kind of excited. So we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be August 18th through 20th. Registration was supposed to close on the 30th, but I'm still getting responses, so I'm extending that. So I'm going to say, let me know by Thursday. And it's $55 a person to get in. And again, it's men only, so you got to be an adult and you have to be a male and to get in. And that's not to exclude anybody. I'd love to see this. I'd love to see somebody step up and do this for women too.
That would be fantastic.
Or whoever, whatever you identify as, somebody could do that. Great. This is who I'm doing it for, because this is who I can connect with and help.
And that's just so cool that you did decide to step up and do that, I think. And you can also find information and links to everything on the community calendar page at WESB.com. But it is also, as Josh said, the original deadline was the 30th, so you will find it on July 30th. But
that's all right.
But it's there. It's there. You'll find it. So, Josh Hatcher, thank you so much for stopping by. This has been great. I haven't seen you in forever, so this was fun.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been The Liveline.
If you have any questions or comments about today's show, send your email to 1490@wesb.com.
The Liveline on News Radio 1490 WESB, Bradford.
1490 WESB Bradford, serving you for 70 years.